2, 1. Okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna send you the link, Claudine, to Chris's
Okay.
Facebook page. Yeah, there's a website, sunsweetthunder.org. He
Hello,
offers.
everyone. We're live on Facebook and also Instagram as well. So, yeah, I think today's topic we're going to be talking about trauma. So, let me see. I'm gonna pull up the Facebook Live post. Let's see. Okay. Put this together. Okay, so you're currently live. Okay. There you go. Okay. So we're talking about trauma now, and pretty much collective trauma, individual trauma, and how it affects all of us. So, yeah, one of the, I guess we were talking about it earlier this week, Kath, Amy, and I, about how trauma can affect us on a collective level. Here in the Philippines, when you think about it, I think we were talking about colonization and how it has affected, the psyche, the collective psyche, or here in the Philippines. So it's pretty interesting. And also, when there's typhoons and storms and stuff like that, that also causes trauma as well. So pretty interesting. But there's actually this one article by this on the New York Times that I forget her name, Emily or something like that. I forget her name, but she's a sociologist, and she said our rituals and stuff that we do as a society pretty much they serve as a linchpin for society. And when we lose that social cohesion that keeps us together, it in a way causes trauma. So in a way, like happening right now with the coronavirus and everything, as we're kind of experiencing trauma on a global scale. But I mean, there's ways to go about that. And yeah, I mean, I've always believed, I'm not sure if it's true, I'm no doctor or anything, but trauma breeds trauma. But there's always ways to heal that, by visiting it. There's different techniques, by being in the present moment. Uh, there's different therapies out there. Yeah. Um, It's laughter is also a good way to deal with trauma as well. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I guess we'll just talk about some examples of trauma and collective trauma and personal trauma and yeah, how we've dealt with it.
Thanks, thanks, Michael. So,
Amy.
Amy, hi. Ami's here. She just finished two up. Hello. How's your
Hi,
goddess?
was Arya's first time to do that. The old school scheming.
By the way, we're live on Facebook.
And we put the Zoom link on the Facebook comment section for the Facebook Live. So if anyone wants to join, feel free to join, or you can just watch us on Facebook Live as well. Um, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But yeah, there's of course a great practice when it comes to trauma. Dealing with trauma is of course meditation and equanimity. That's a good practice as well. But yeah, I guess. Um, does anyone want to talk about any trauma that they're thinking about currently?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. One thing about trauma though is because I have this fear around water before, so I didn't acquire that kind of trauma and fear in this lifetime. So it could be carried. It's really like a cellular body memory where our bodies remember something that is not too much to handle for the body at that time. So so that's why the body would like protect yourself. You know, trauma is a one way of your body and your brain protecting yourself from too much pain, from too much harm, from too much, too much, a lot, too much of those emotions that you are not capable of handling during that time. So I'm just wondering why I have this fear fear of the water, even if I don't have it, I don't experience anything in this lifetime. So it's like, oh, it must be like somehow other lives or past lives. So it's crazy to it's crazy to think of how we are kind of sponge, and we are kind of collecting our cellular memories of our cells have memories of the past and the present, and how that is how powerful it is, right? So by that being said, it's also empowering because our cells have memories, so we can create new memories, overriding those traumas from the past or something that is too much for the body to handle. Like for example, when I was a kid, I I hate being, I have a trauma about not trauma, kind of I have resistance to men generally. We're talking masculine and feminine. It's just because I grew up in a household full of women, and I didn't really grow up with a father and things like that. And so when I was a kid, so that experience kinds of very painful. Am I still live?
Yes, you are.
So kind of very painful to me. So during that time, so I kind of carried that. Kind of, I have a resistance of like, yes, women power. Like we really don't need men in the world. You know what I mean? I have that belief, and that is kind of rooted from my childhood, that I didn't really grow up with my father around, or a masculine figure around the family. So my body or my brain interpret that as something painful and traumatic, so yes, women power. Like, we really don't need men in the world. You know what I mean? I have that belief, and that is kind of rooted from my
Hi,
childhood,
Chris.
Hi, Michael.
my father
How are
around
you?
there, but myself.
I see you or
So,
hear you.
my body or my
Hi.
brain
I can hear you. I
interpret
can't
that
see
as
you.
something painful.
Oh, you can't see us? Oh. Huh.
Somebody explain it on
Hi,
Facebook.
Chris.
Is that better?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, we can hear you, but we can't see you too.
It's up. Sorry.
Let's see.
Let's see. Open Zoom. Maybe we'll do that.
But yeah, I'm like, I also brought to mind like, trauma pretty much, like in the United States, pretty much what was happening. Also in the past, like an example would be slavery that people endured. And if it's not, brought out and dealt with, you know, you have stuff like riots and, people, it blows up, in our faces sometimes, and that's why it needs to be addressed and dealt with. Kind of like emotions, if you repress certain emotions sometimes, they sometimes just come out in the worst way possible. And yeah, so I'm just thinking about that. Like, and also when it comes to, I was thinking also of the Stonewall riots for people that, you know, for the LGBT community back in 1969. That also, you know, they were dealing with trauma, being repressed and everything, and then that happened, and then now you see people like, being more prideful in who they are, and it's being addressed. But sometimes, it reaches a breaking point, and it's good if we can uh, face that before it actually reaches that breaking point, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Right.
I think there's a lot of hi everyone. Hi,
Hey,
Kath. Hey,
Hi, Chris.
thank
hey,
Hi,
you.
Grace.
Always.
thanks.
Huh.
Glad I could bounce in here and join you guys. So,
Thank you.
yeah, no, trauma healing is something I'm very, very passionate about.
Oh, that's
I,
great.
I work at a recovery center in Thailand, so a good portion of the people who I serve are dealing with trauma. So it is something I'm very intimate with, uh, having that experience. I myself had post-traumatic stress disorder after September 11th, being in New York City during September 11th, and then it wasn't even the incident so much. The incident was impactful, but the days and weeks of being in New York City after September 11th was really traumatic. So I'm familiar with both sides of the coin, having been as an adult traumatized, and then going through that process of recovery, and now with people with mindfulness and practices to heal that. Some of the research that I've done recently suggests that trauma can go back up to 14 generations on a cellular level.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and a lot of the research also is pointing to the idea that 91% of the global community has some sort of trauma. So that's an astronomical figure. 91%. It's almost 100. It's almost everybody has some sort of trauma that we're consciously or unconsciously dealing with. So yes, I think you're right, Michael, when you say that it's something that really needs to be looked at, and healing on a global level with an extraordinary amount of sensitivity to particularly to the movements, to make way for the movements that are happening. Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ community, and so forth. People coming forth who have a history of child abuse and things like that, to make room for that and to hold that with compassion. So important these days, because it's the only way we're going to see an end to gun violence, to abuse, and to discrimination. Um, is to heal from
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's just sometimes it seems I don't know, it seems a bit hard, like to address that trauma, Like I was reading something about a window of tolerance, when it comes to dealing with trauma, like how it's where you can actually you're stable enough that you can deal with it and stuff like that. And then there are times where it's like too much where you can't, deal with it. So
that.
I don't know. I don't know that much about it. I don't have that much information on, trauma, but yeah, I'm here to learn and to
Mhm.
yeah, learn from everyone and talk about it. So
Me too. Yeah, well, I'd like to hear from other people too. I don't want to come in and overtake the session. So anybody else who wants to share, please.
um
Want to share that one of the trauma that I am experiencing, personally that I'm experiencing, and also I feel like the collective is really about sexual shaming on women. like it's you know, during, especially in the Philippines or during colonial times, women are really seen as some, you know, like not an important aspect of the community, and it's really a taboo for women to explore sexuality or even talk about masturbation or even talked about things like this, right? So, and it's really rooted in colonial times and women as not important part of society, and really women should be proper and women should not be wild, should be like Maria Clara, as you, you know what I'm trying to say. And so from that, and without now it's coming to light that even the sexual part, the sexual energy of women or even all people are is very important in spirituality, you know what I mean? Like you cannot uh, totally or fully deal with spirituality without dealing with your sexuality, your desire, that sexual energy, that kind of creative energy in you. So that is one thing that I am actually like trying to explore within myself, and you know, be feel comfortable of you know, we are all kind of sexual beings, you know, all beings on earth, yeah. And so that is one of the colonial trauma, personal trauma, kind of, as Chris is saying, like it was carried from how many generations probably. Now we're experiencing it. But the good thing about it is like we are becoming more and more open, you know, as we are like, people are like accepting practices like Tantra, like dealing with orgasmic enlightenment and things like that, or like really caring for the womb, really caring for the mother, having ceremonial with menstruation, you know, like honoring that menstruation as divine connection to the feminine connection, not as like, oh my god, menstruation, that's ill, that's like, you know what I mean? Like, so now it's kind of the community is trying to heal that aspects of the feminine, the aspects of a divine feminine, which is all that kind of that circle, and which I'm really happy about, you know. So that's one thing that I'm dealing with before. And Michael, when you said about tolerance, I believe that it's because before I didn't really have the guts to like say even about sexual for women, like sexual practices for women. I would not say that with anyone or in Facebook Live, right? So right now, kind of build that confidence around it and educated myself about the practice and really explore the practice. And now I'm understanding it on a deeper level, not just on my judgment of what it is, right? I have full of judgment, even me before, like, oh my God, it should not be talked about. It's like, should be ashamed about it. So right now, kind of build that tolerance as you are saying. Like I'm more open, I'm more open to like dealing that with me and with the collective and accepting and receiving how that's really could be, you know, a practice in my life. So yeah, that's just one thing I want to say. Like I'm happy and to give that light to the community that it's okay to deal that aspects, especially women, right? Like harness that sexual energy for whatever purpose that you want it to be, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I just totally agree that, in colonial times, there's trauma that happens and stuff like that. And I forget, someone told me something about how sometimes cultural habits are a form of trauma, uh, you know, at a societal level. So just like, how what Kath was saying, also, just like, here in the Philippines, when people say, sir, ma'am, and stuff like that, now, it's being respectful, but, it's also that, you know, it's a, it's a cultural thing, a sign of respect, but also it's, going all the way back from, colonial times when, they were kind of like they had to say sir, ma'am, to, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Distinction between sir is a sir and a ma'am is a ma'am, or like status
yeah,
in life.
Yeah, it's it does show up in the strangest places. I mean, I was reading the other day how there's a movement in America now to take out when real estate agents show houses, for them not to say the master bedroom, because that implies slavery. And that was where the master slept, and and things like that. So to take out that
wow,
language out of yeah, I wouldn't have even thought of that. But like you say, these cultural norms that come um, out of these trauma-inducing behaviors from our past. I mean, I grew up in the South in America, where the Confederate flag was normal. And so to see it being torn down and being seen for what it is, for me, is very relieving. To witness that in my lifetime, it's beautiful to see that. But yes, you're right. How it's incredible sometimes. How wow, I wouldn't even thought that was symbolic of that type of fear and hatred of slavery. But now shedding the light on that so we can all heal from it. And Kath also bringing to the forefront sexuality, um, male and female, is extraordinarily important, I think. And we touched on this last time when we talked about emotion, and how repression is one of the main causes of social illness. And that was Freud's biggest theory, was that we're all sexually repressed, and that's why we have crime. That's why we have violence. That's why we have all of these social illnesses, is because we don't know how to express our urges in a healthy way. So yeah, absolutely, there's trauma there on both sides of the gender equation, and to be able to bring that to the forefront and to heal from that in a healthy way is so important right now. Both sexual and anger. That's why I deal a lot with anger and emotions, is because I feel very passionately that that's a real um, repressive focus as well. And so it causing a lot of trauma there, that repression of anger, repression of different emotions, sadness, and so forth. Yeah.
yeah. That's yeah, you brought up anger. It's surprising because like a few weeks ago and stuff like that, I I thought I wasn't repressing anger and stuff like that, but then I realized, it was seeping out, in kind of like the not the worst way, but not the best way. And anger, and yeah, it was just coming out. And yeah, and then also I could feel like physical sickness coming on as well, so like mentally, emotionally, physically, it was affecting me and stuff like that. I thought I dealt
Mhm.
with it, but yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's pretty interesting, like,
Mhm.
that when I think about it, there is, some personal stuff, in my childhood and stuff, probably that, reason why I, you know, try to not deal with, try to not get angry and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm sure there's, positive ways to let it out and stuff like that, to um, let it come out. And, that's why I think like shadow work with Jung, you brought up Freud and stuff like that. And with Jung, he talked about, pretty much just dealing with your shadow and the other aspect of ourselves that we kind of like don't care about, or we don't want to, you know, we kind of like push it to the side, but it's still there, it's still part of our being, and, if we repress it, it will still come out, whether it's sexual, whether it's emotional, like anger, or, uh, whatever it may be. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Isn't the human psyche amazing? Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
That's like, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
right? That's a lot of land. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. I just remembering the quote, like, what you resist exist. You know what I mean? Like the more you suppress it, the more it will come out. And then
Mhm.
act with ways. You know, if you don't deal trauma, for example, consciously, you know. So we're trying to do is like deal our pains and traumas in a conscious manner, so it will not come out in a ugly ways, like our body are like stressed or like we're in a tense, pressured situation, and where it comes out, you know what I mean? So at least we can deal with that in a safe, conscious environment, like this, like talking about it or having meditation practices or like a safe space for you to like be angry or like safe space for you to like whatever to explore, you know. So yeah, it's anyway just comes to my mind speaking out loud.
Well, that's what we're here for. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just I'll relate a bit of my own personal story. Maybe that will help some people here who are listening about trauma. Maybe. So I had a pretty intense childhood, let's say. It was a very it was ripe with drama. So I was carrying a lot of trauma with me. Now, at the same time, I was practicing Zen meditation. And unfortunately, I learned to use meditation as a repressive technique, very common in the late 80s, early 90s in America, because it was just coming to America, and there were a lot of mistranslations and a lot of poor teachings that were kind of leaking into the culture. And I happened to be susceptible to that. So I wasn't able. I thought I was getting enlightened, but I was really just repressing everything. Yeah, really not a good state of affairs to be in. But then I happened to be in New York, as I mentioned, on September 7th. And when towers fell, I felt pain, and it was I hadn't felt it in so long, in years. I hadn't felt anything in years. And so that it shook me, like literally shook to the core. All of a sudden, all of these emotions over the days and weeks and months following started coming back, I was blissed out, and at the same time in a great deal of pain, because I hadn't. It was like being able to see color again for when you've seen black and white for your whole life. That's what it felt like for me. All of a sudden, I could feel the whole range of emotions was available to me that before I had numbed out, and I think that's what happens. What I've seen when I work with people with trauma, it's this kind of a numbing out of the need to survive. They these people who have trauma tend to numb out certain emotions or certain areas of their life as a survival technique, and so slowly, gradually welcoming in what we've have previously blocked out as a way of healing the trauma. Is the way to go there, I think. It hit me like a frying pan when the buildings fell down. And that I wouldn't recommend that method necessarily. I was lucky in that I had really great teachers that were with me, good friends that could walk me through what was happening. But I think that's the idea, is to open to what's there. And Michael, you mentioned that window of tolerance, very important, to recognize when you're out of that window of tolerance, when your experience has gotten too hot, and then you'll know, because you shut on to what's happening. If you're getting too emotional, too hot, then you're engaging too much of that trauma at that moment. And that's a whole nother practice that I'm happy to go into if anybody wishes. But that's anyway.
Yeah, that would be
Personal.
great.
Okay.
And there's also like this one technique also. I don't know. It starts with the D. It's like 4 letters, and it's about like moving your eyes. Has anyone heard about that technique?
I do know this technique. It's almost like a hypnotist with a watch, it's kind of, you can do it faster, and it activates the left brain and the right brain at the same time. Yeah,
Okay.
it's meant to be very healing. I've never experienced it, but I know about it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about it because someone told me about it not too long ago, so I was interested in it. So I'll probably research some more into it later.
Yeah,
But
I all I know about that technique is, no, I can give you, maybe I might be able to dig up a name of the therapist I heard about that from. Yeah,
When
but
we I
go ahead.
I have when we deal with fear, like we have this thing about slow exposure. Does that work with trauma? Like slowly exposing yourself until you're like can't handle the situation. Does that
Mhm.
does that kind of relate?
So
oh,
I usually use a diagram for this when I teach this, and I sometimes have it around. Let me draw it out really quick. It's just 3 circles. Some of you may have seen this already. So, but it's quite important I do a lot of this diagram on my videos. So, um, so I call this is really the 2 hot circles. Some of you may know this already. So the middle circle is the comfort zone, right? And the second circle there, that's I'm sorry, the middle circle, comfort zone. Second circle, yes, is the challenge zone. And the third circle, the outer circle, is too hot. That's the too hot zone. So yes, Kath, this works very similarly to what you were referring to. We start in meditation, we start with present moment awareness. That's generally the comfort zone. And there might be some challenge there with thoughts and things like that, particularly if we're just starting meditation, but that's generally the comfort zone. And then we can start to bring in the trauma. This is usually done with visualization or just remembering some traumatic experience. Now, the idea is to hold that present moment awareness, ideally with the sounds of the present moment or with the sensations of the body, and then welcoming in the trauma at the same time. That'll put you into the challenge zone. So you want to kind of bounce back and forth between comfort zone and challenge zone. Now, if one is working on this on their own, and that's okay to do, but the warning there is that if you get to the too hot zone, then you've gone too far. You've touched in with a bit too much of the emotional charge of the trauma. And you'll know when that happens, you'll start crying, or you'll start clenching up. You'll start hardening against the experience or pushing against the experience. And so if that's happening, then you're in the too hot zone. And so if that happens, the best thing to do is just to stop. If you're visualizing, stop visualizing. Maybe even stand up if you're seated, sitting, meditating, or sitting, just doing this exercise. Stand up, make a cup of tea, or just take a few breaths, whatever it is that you need to do to get back into the comfort zone, like that. Because if you stay in the too hot zone, you can actually re-traumatize yourself. So just the ideal is to get back into the comfort zone and then to just dance back and forth between the comfort zone and the challenge zone. So touching with just a little bit at a time, then come back to the breath in the body, take some breaths, bring in the trauma, and touch it, feel it, come back, breath in the body. So very slowly working through it in that way. Also, I found journaling really helps. I think journaling is a really powerful way of dealing with traumatic experiences, particularly like in combination with meditation. That for me was really, really healing. Because when you journal the traumatic experience, you're objectifying it. So it gives you a way of looking at it from an outside view. And that can be really helpful.
Oh, okay. So like that can be used also for like exposure therapy, like let's say like Kat's example. I used to have a fear of water too, but I slowly exposed myself to water little by little to the
Mhm.
point where I actually went diving. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um
yeah.
yeah. So I
Exactly.
mean it was hard, but yeah. I had
Yeah.
like nightmares and stuff, but yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Would you go again?
Uh, yeah, like I went like about a year and a half ago, I would say. Can't remember the exact date, but yeah, it's been a while since I've been back. But yeah, I did come back and I got my advanced open water diver
Wow.
certificate.
What?
So
That's
yeah.
what a success
You're
story.
way
That's great.
beyond too hot
Yeah.
zone, Michael. Way beyond.
But even just thinking about it, sometimes it kind of like I get a little rigid and what's the word? Yeah, it's like you can feel this tension in my body if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
Michael, excuse me, what do you say? You get bends when you go diving?
No, I had a fear of water before, so I mostly the seawater, and so going diving that helped.
I see. No, no, because the reason I came to the Philippines was for diving. I came here for 45 years ago. But my favorite sport was diving, and I go diving every day when I was
Mm.
here and I was young.
Yeah, that's where I got my certificate, the open water diver certificate at Kontiki at your place.
Uh,
Also, I'd like to say I just remember an event that I also have a fear of heights, and I just went to a friend's place, and he got this like super net, and it involves with height. So I feel like I kind of tried it to step on that, even if it scares me, because I trust the person that's with me. You know what I mean? I feel like dealing with trauma also, um, we kind of open up more and wants to deal more and go to the hot zone more if we actually like trust the people that the person that's holding space, the person that is navigating, person that is helping you, uh, looked into your fear or your trauma. So I just wanna, I just remember, like, if I don't trust that person, I would probably like, hell no, you go, I'll not go, you know what I mean? So yeah, I feel like trust is an important aspect for us to kind of step out of that comfort zone and challenge ourselves and see what we can.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think trust is a very, very important part of being a facilitator. Part of my job is to establish that bond with the people that I work with, so that they can feel that they can step out on that ledge with me, and that I won't drop them off the ledge. And I think that's you're absolutely right. Establishing that trust is fundamental. Otherwise, it can lead to re-traumatization. Yeah, so that I think it's really important. Mm. Just a thought of a nun that I know is working on her own phobias, and the heights, phobia of heights, which I have too, comes to mind. She's using a virtual reality setup. And so she has this virtual reality goggles, and she says she puts them on and she lays down on her floor. And she's all of a sudden she's on a 60-story building on the ledge, and and she's, and but that's how she's doing it. She's working through this, and she says she gets shaking, and the palms of her hands and the sweat's coming, and she knows consciously that she's on her floor in her bedroom, but the virtual reality goggles are so accurate and realistic, apparently, that she really can feel that fear arise. And then you're in this, mentally, logically, you're in a safe zone. right? But you still allow yourself to go out on that ledge in the virtual reality world. So you're kind of walking that line between challenge zone and too hot and comfort all at the same time. I think that's a really, if that's accessible to people to have a virtual reality setup, what a great way to work through trauma and phobia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually heard something about VR being used for trauma patients, for people with PTSD and other forms of traumatic stress and phobias as well. It's interesting. Yeah.
I can die. Oh my goodness. Like thinking of it, like 64 floor. Oh my goodness. I don't know. Breathing. I don't know. My body's like reacting.
Well, there you go. There's your new challenge zone.
I know. It's crazy.
What's
Yeah, me too.
everyone's? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to comment. My
I was
sense
just
of.
gonna. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Helene. Helene is actually.
Hello. Hi.
We're
It's so
just
good to listen to you guys. Yeah, the topic about trauma. Well, I guess I'd like to share this. I guess I'm really at the point of my life where I'm, trying to feel all the traumatic experiences I had when I was a kid up till now. And personally, I'm trying to find some ways how to deal with it. I've already tried meditations and a lot of techniques.
Oh.
Looks like we lost her. She'll be back.
Slow internet connection right now. I have to turn my video off.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. So I have a question for you guys. Could you or could any one of you cite any traumatic experiences in a relationship or relationships with people around you, family members, with the opposite sex, and how do you deal with it?
I can share a little bit of experience. In the beginning of this video, I was sharing about how I was very kind of indifferent and resistant to masculine figures. Like really, it's because I grew up in a family with all women, and I didn't really grow up with a father or a masculine figure. So that kind of when I was super young and didn't really understand what was going on, so I kind of have that cold feeling towards men, and I was kind of like probably angry, like why am I like this, like why is my father not around, kind of, that psychology thing. And so when I grow up also, I kind of resist that relationship to opposite sex, I mean, I feel like I don't want to be in relationship with men. So yeah, that was the root cause of it. Like I feel like I'm into women power. Like we really don't need men in the world. I really don't need men or a man in my life because I grew up kind of not having a masculine figure, and I'm fine. So for me, I was so prideful about that idea before, but now I was kind of like, oops, that was actually my pain speaking, So when not until after college that I was kind of slowly exposing myself to like, oh, it's not really that bad. It was really rooted from this, and starting to educate myself and starting to hang around with men, friends, dating men until I kind of recover from that, kind of healed from that. So yeah, basically that was my experience with masculine in general. So if that actually makes sense. So
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Ja, men så här, för exempel, Kathy, I mean, the I have been married. I've been married for 40 years. It is always good in the beginning, but when you're growing older and older, the wife have a different interest, and I have a different interest. So we have nothing together. She like her church, and it's very busy with the church, and I don't like to go to church. That's all. So what I like very much study in the internet, the Gaia, study about the space, study about what you call it, David Wilcock. I listened from David Wilcock. It was about the space program in the United States, 2020. It will come out this year, open in the market. It was very interesting. This is my thing. I like technique. I like everything to build up the world in a cleaner world, better world, positive world. Stop all the war. Everything we will be up to 5D. I believe so. We will come up to higher vibration, and everything will come okay on the earth. But
Yeah.
we're talking about end time, and we're talking about the what you say, the shift up to 5D. And we don't know anything when it will be, but we say the Earth is moving higher and higher until it will come to 5D. And there the Earth will be as a paradise again. Everything is equal. There is no mister, there is no boss, we are equal, all. No rich, no poor.
I believe so. I'm with you.
And
Yeah.
I think that there is that, yes, that everything, evolutionarily speaking, everything has its place, including trauma. That we're all growing as a race, evolving, and things like that. But I think healing trauma is a part of that evolutionary growth, and it needs to be so that we don't grow. Ideally, we'll grow like this, and so we all grow together, and then we reach that point evolutionary, that shift that Sven was talking about. But currently what's happening is we're kind of growing like this, and so things are happening in that way. And certain groups of people are getting left behind. But ideally, with compassion, we come back and we help them up too. We pick them up by the hands. They're a part of the human family. And we all need to be able to heal and grow and evolve together. I think it was Martin Luther King who said, "I'm not free until everyone's free." And I think that's really important to recognize, is that I'm not free until everyone's free. Now I'm a white male, and as a part of being born a white male in America, I have been now realizing that I was born into this privileged class. I didn't know that when I was born. I didn't know that growing up, but because the society I was born in is racist by its systemic structure, I unfortunately took some of those traits growing up. So now I have to learn to let go of that. And part of that learning is to allow everyone to be free so that I can actually be free. I think that's quite important to recognize, that yes, we are evolving, we are growing, the world is going to shift. What that will look like and when it will happen, nobody can really say. But as we're growing, as we're evolving, to recognize that we need to do this together. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot longer, and we're gonna grow and evolve with the same dysfunctions that we have right now if we don't heal. as a society, as a culture. Now, that's quite far from Milag, the question you asked about relationship trauma. Is that right?
Yeah, about relationship
Yeah.
trauma. Yeah, that's the question.
Is
Like,
that, yeah.
if you could cite any example of relationship traumas and how do you deal with it? What methods do you use in order to face those traumas?
Yeah. You mentioned meditation. I'm not sure what teachers you practice with or what materials you were using, but I recommend compassion meditations, loving kindness meditations. They're both really useful types of meditation practices for healing trauma of any sort. Yeah. So I would recommend starting with either those. Also, there are meditations designed to cultivate forgiveness. Those are very powerful healing modalities. Those three meditations, and I mentioned journaling too. I think journaling is quite important.
Yeah, I heard that and I was like, oh yeah, I miss journaling. I used to write really every day how I feel about myself, about the situation, about the day. Because, I'd like to share this, guys. I'm really in this situation now where you feel really anxious of it got to like I thought I was really strong during the first few months of the quarantine, and then it hit me. I'm like, oh, I feel the anxiety now, all these worries, and then the strong urge to go home, to just go back home to where my parents are, where I can live off grid, because where we live, it's really like infinite flowing waters, and our family has the farm. So that's where I would feel like secure about what's happening right now, about the situation. And then there's this relationship traumatic problem of the feeling of abandonment, the feeling of rejection and not being valued. So I'm currently facing that, and I'm trying every day to really try to be strong and try to keep myself at the ground, and to really try to reflect what is it trying to teach me, what kind of evolutionary leap, what kind of shift I have to do to myself in order to surpass all of this.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tricky place to be in. But I think one of the first steps in healing from trauma, particularly, it sounds to me like you're in it. So it's not even so much that you're healing from a situation, but you're coping with the situation at the same time. And so,
Exactly.
yeah. So I think part of the part of that process is to recognize that you're not alone.
Exactly.
That there's a lot of people who are feeling very similar emotions to what you're feeling. And so I think that's very helpful in healing and in coping with a traumatic or a stressful situation, is to recognize that the human family is feeling stressed right now. The global tribe is feeling a lot of pain right now. So to just to know that you're not alone in this, that there's so many out here who are feeling much in the same way that you are. Also, you mentioned going home. If that's a comfortable place for you to be in, to ride out the storm, I don't see why you wouldn't do that, unless there's some economic factors there that I can't see. But being in a comfortable place where you can go through this is probably very advisable. I would guess.
Yeah, thank you so much for the assurance, Chris. The feeling of oneness with everyone else going through the same thing. is also healing. That is helping. Yeah. Um, with the evolutionary leap that Shen is also mentioning, what also helps me is like joining these groups of people who are into the awakening phase, like the alchemy of the new earth, the 5D consciousness, the event group. So I sometimes read some of the posts there, and I would like read posts of people who are like, oh, I could not sleep during the full moon and I'm feeling drained or tired. And that would make me feel like, oh yeah, I'm really not alone. I'm not alone with this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, that's why they have support groups and things like that. Because it's important. I think it's part of the human need to have that type of community when we're going through a traumatic event, to be able to share it with people. And even if you're just reading posts, somehow you're resonating with that human connection of people who are experiencing a common experience. And I think, that's very, very valuable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's important. I agree. Everyone's sharing that same experience, and you know, after a while, we can do away with the us versus them mentality. You guys were talking about oneness and everything, and yeah, once we realize we're like you were talking also, Chris, about when it comes to that shift and stuff like that. As long as we don't forget other people and work with them, then um, that's how I think the best way we can evolve, all together. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just resonated with a lot with what you guys said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And I
Thank you.
share some when I can I share something when I into a very difficult situation, like like crisis in my life. One method that I am actually doing is a meditation on impermanence, like tapping into that consciousness of everything is changing and evolving. Along with that meditation and impermanence, I would tap into being here now, like the be here now meditation of like, okay, I'm here, I'm grounded with my senses, and what is really the danger am I facing? The dangers are really real, or is it my mind creating the dangers? So it really helps me kind of navigate the situation of why am I feeling like this? Where are this anxiety coming from? And then along with that, I would put in impermanence meditation that really everything is evolving and changing. Like even nature is changing. Even all of us is like going with the flow and change. And sometimes, like for example, in a river, like the river is flowing. Sometimes you will hit a rock, sometimes you will hit a tree, a log, but we are kind of flowing and changing. And meditating on that aspect, on that light, it really helps me kind of like, okay, not this is not as scary as I think. This is not as and most importantly, this is not permanent. You know what I mean? So that really gives me that, okay, what do I have to learn now? And then this shall pass. So whenever I'm faced with that kind of strong situation, so that kind of helped me also.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Kat. Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
I think, recognizing the impermanent nature of experiences can be very empowering. Yeah, absolutely. Just to add one thing to that, if I may, is it? Can I pronounce your name? Mila?
Oh,
Is
it's
that
Halani.
Halani? Okay.
My
Okay.
real name is Helani.
Hilani. Okay. Yeah. I thought there was some discrepancy there. Okay. All right, Hilani. So, if you are going to meditate on impermanence or loving kindness or compassion or forgiveness, any of those great practices that can help in trauma, I think it's important if you're holding trauma, it sounds like you're aware that you are, to start meditation outside of the body. So to start with the sounds first, or some other present moment experience, that visual, something visual, a candle, colors that you're seeing. But starting your meditation practice outside of the body. I usually use sounds. I think sounds are really good for that. Sounds are always present moment experiences. And then start there, ground your awareness in the present moment through the sounds, and then come back through the body, and then maybe to the breath. The reason that is because we hold our trauma in our body. And so if you're starting a meditation with the breath and the body, the traditional method of meditating is through the breath and the body. Often it gets too hot. If you were here when I went through the 2 hot circles, it can get too hot before we even get into the practice. Sometimes the breath, if we're holding trauma, it's hard to breathe sometimes, and it's hard to feel the breath sometimes. It's difficult to feel the body sometimes if we're holding trauma in the body. So starting outside the body and moving in is a lot easier and more accessible when we are working through trauma and meditation. So just a tip there, if you are going to engage those practices.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Chris.
Chris. Thank you for the session. Yeah, I remember the letters of my spiritual mentors. By the way, Chris, I was a Buddhist nun in a monastery in Mars. So I did the Buddhist way of meditation, the metta meditation, also the anatta, the impermanence. And yeah, this is kind of new to me, what you have just suggested, the awareness of the sound and then return back to the body awareness. That's good. I'm going to try that tomorrow morning early. Yeah, I remember the message from my spiritual mentor. He told me that part of our inner work is to really heal and dissolve all the traumatic experiences we have or we had in the past. And that is what I am going through right now. It's kind of heavy, but I'm so grateful that I'm experiencing it. And also the feeling of gratefulness is helping me to recognize it, being grateful, thank you, like saying thank you for letting me experience this, for letting me go through all of this instead of going through all of that later on. So I have that experience right here, right now. And he told me that we have to do that, dissolving the traumatic experiences that we have stored in our psyche in order, it's kind of deep because he said in order for the unconsciousness and the consciousness to merge. So that's the kind of puzzle that I'm also trying to reflect at this moment of my life, as he was talking about the universal consciousness, the subconscious and the consciousness that we all have, in order for that to merge. And then he said in the end, and once these two come to the center point, then there will be a time that human beings will emit gamma and radiation rays, which is like kind of like wow for me, like wow, really? We're gonna be like emitting gamma and radiation rays. How can that be? So that was maybe what he was talking about, the next evolutionary leap of from the Homo sapiens into something more than that, the next Homo kind of human beings. Yeah.
Well, that's a lovely thought. lovely. Lovely.
Yeah.
I think we need that that inspiration, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, looks like we're getting close to past 8 and everything, but does anyone else want to share anything before we log off?
Final word.
Okay. But yeah, I was just it was perfect talking about everything and trauma and different ways to deal with it. I'm glad it was brought up, and thank you everyone for sharing your insights.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you all.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alani. Thank you, Kath, Amy,
I'm
everyone.
You enjoy your evening.
thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Happy healing.
Thank you, Kat.